Welcome everyone, my name is Brendan Snyder. Thank you for joining me. So welcome to the first question and answer session. I put out some feelers a couple days back and I got an overwhelming response. Lots of questions came in, mostly music related, some personal. I'm going to break this up. I'll do all the music related first and then I'll do the personal ones at the end. So if you're interested in those, do stick around. I will be getting to those. Now, just to catch up some people in case you're new to my channel, I am an architect by day. That's what I do for profession, but I am a music lover 24/7. I've got over 9,000 CDs. I'm always listening to music. It's the reason I created this channel, to have some sort of outlet to put all that great music knowledge into. And if you are new, please hit the subscribe button. Also leave a comment, hit like. All those things do help support my channel. Plus, I like the dialogue and the interaction. And just like this with the question and answer, I think this has been really fun getting all these questions in. I'm looking forward to answering them for you guys. And if you guys like this, let me know. I'll do more of these sort of things. I honestly didn't think anyone would be really interested in this, but it just goes to show you how much I know. So one more thing I will say. I'm going to do my best to pronounce everybody's name right. And if I butcher one by accident, I'm really sorry. Just kind of laugh it off with me. I've always had trouble pronouncing people's names, but I'll do the best that I can here. So kicking things off, music-related stuff. Carrie David Sadler asks, why do you prefer CDs over albums? I assume he means vinyl here, so CDs instead of vinyl. One, I think it's the medium that I grew up with is a big part of that. Also, CDs are smaller than vinyl, are easier to store, that sort of stuff. But the other thing I think is there's definitely more in print on CDs than vinyl. Even back in the day, there was a lot of things that never made their way to one format or to the other, kind of a thing like that. But CD has been that medium, and there's a lot of stuff that just isn't on digital either. So for me, at least, because I grew up on it and it's the biggest medium out there, I am sticking with CD. The second question he asks is, why do you think CDs are falling out of favor? I do think it all comes down to digital. The other thing is that the kids of today that are growing up in the digital world and getting all their music digitally, they're the ones with the expendable income, right? So back in the day, they focused music towards kids because they had the expendable income and they went to the stores and they bought it that way. And with streaming, these kids aren't buying physical media music the way we used to. Yes, there are the ones that are going out and buying the vinyl, the limited edition, that sort of stuff. But it's just not the mass way that it used to be. And so ultimately it comes down to digital and just, the kids aren't buying the physical media sort of stuff. All right, next question we have here is from Daryl Bazole. And again, apologize if I'm butchering any of these. I'm doing my best here. What was your first album? All right, so the first piece of music that I got was DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, right? He goes on to become Will Smith and an actor and so forth, but he was a rapper first. Now, I think I got that cassette for doing well in school. I liked the song, Your Parents Just Don't Understand, the music video, so I think my mom went out and got that for me. And an older brother gave me a Daryl Hall and a John Oates cassette, but I remember not connecting with it. I don't even remember the name of it. I would actually like to know what it was, just because I would go back and listen to it today to see if I think any better of it. But the first album, the one that I would call my first album, is Def Leppard Pyromania. And I got that as a cassette from my older brother. But I connected with that one. That was the one that spoke to me. I loved the album cover. I begged to borrow it. I borrowed it, and I just fell in love with it immediately. And I do think that album there set me up for everything else that I became and fell in love with since that point. Now, Makapuka asked the question, what is the first album you bought? And that would be Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction on cassette. Now, I had to beg my mom to let me go get this. It was one of those, ones that came with the parental advisory, and everybody knew that these guys were just, degenerates and drug users and so forth. So they didn't come with the good rap, and I had to really beg my mom, but ultimately she gave in and let me get it. So we can thank her again for my continuing love of all of this kind of music. The next one up is Hartmut Peter, and now Pete Castellello also asked this question, so I'm grouping him in here, but he's got a couple more. I'll get to those in a minute. What was the first CD you bought? So see, I broke these down. You guys may have all meant these roughly the same. First album, that you own, first album that you bought, or first CD that you bought, but these are all actually different things for me. So the first CD that I bought was Iron Maiden, No Prayer for the Dying. Now, Hartman Peter asked 8 different questions. Fortunately, he told me I could pick the best one. Out of all of those, I actually decided to go with 3. So I've got 2 more from him. And this one here I liked. It's a game we've all played. You can take 5 CDs to a desert island. What would they be? So I narrowed this down. Pink Floyd, Division Bell. I need some prog rock. Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. I think it's the greatest hard rock album ever, in my opinion. I need some sleaze rock, so I'm going to bring Rat, Detonator. And then I need some just straight ahead classic 60s rock, The Doors, their debut album. Just think there's nothing more perfect than that. And then I need some AOR, and I'd bring Journey's greatest hits. So that would be the 5: Pink Floyd, Guns N' Roses, Rat, The Doors, Journey. And I think that speaks pretty well to my overall musical tastes. The other question he asked, which I found to be interesting, was if you could meet one artist, who would it be? Now, I've met a lot of artists. I've met 58, and I want to preference that by saying that, like, I've met AC/DC. So I count them as 1. I don't count them as 5 because there's 5 members and, Brian Johnson and Angus, kind of a thing. No. So I've met 58 different artists and musicians, like AC/DC, Aerosmith, Motley Crue, Rat, Slayer, Pantera, Faith No More. So I've met a lot. I've met most of my heroes, but there's a few that I haven't. And I think if I were to pick someone, somebody that might get, giddy like a schoolboy about, kind of a thing, like I did back in the day, John Bon Jovi. I think he's a really smart, intelligent guy. He just seems like an all-around good guy. He's also a businessman, and I'm a real big fan of his music, so I would really like to meet him. Somebody else would be Joe Elliott of Def Leppard. I also think he's just a really intelligent individual. I'd love to sit down and have a conversation with him. And then somebody else I put on this list, and I could go either way with it. I'm a huge fan of Pink Floyd. But I don't know if meeting him would necessarily do what get me into that sort of giddy excitement. But I'd love to meet David Gilmour from Pink Floyd and put that little notch on my belt too, just being a huge Pink Floyd fan. All right, now as I mentioned, Pete Costello, he asked 2 additional questions. I've got those here. Are there any albums you traded away and regretted? Yes, that happened to me over and over and over until I learned ultimately, don't trade any albums away. When I find an album and it just doesn't click with me, or I buy it and it doesn't work for me, I just put it away. And 6 months to a year later, sometimes those things click with me, and I wonder how it is that I didn't like it the first time I listened to it. But I've found that sometimes I'm not always in the mood for that band when it comes out, and I buy it at that time. So I just learned, don't get rid of anything. And then how did your interest in music start? So I don't know if I have a real distinct answer to this, but I will say it's probably my older brothers. I have some really good memories of sitting around the turntable and listening to like Queen and ABBA, bands like that. I'm trying to think, I've got some other, ones that we sat around. Journey was another one. But I think the other thing is, having thought about this for many years, I think because music is a solitary thing as well as something you can do in groups, it appealed to me that way. I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert, so being able to listen to music by myself is something that I can do. But at the same time, I love going out to concerts and meeting up with friends and seeing bands and sharing in it and all of that sort of thing. So music fills both sides of that. And I think that's, at least psychologically, why I really got into music and have just gravitated towards it. Okay, next up I've got Stephanie Roshan. She asks, top 5 bands and albums of all time. So I couldn't limit it to 5. I had to do 10. I tried my best to limit it to 5. I just couldn't do it. No particular order here. Pink Floyd, AC/DC, Guns N' Roses, The Doors, Queen, U2, Yes, Journey, Bon Jovi, Def Leppard. I'm going to have to probably do that as a standalone video, so I'll go into more detail at that at some point, but I'll probably have to do the top 10 bands of all time kind of a thing. It sounds like it'd be a really good one. All right, Joe Lampo asks, what is your greatest experience meeting an artist or band? Now, remember before I mentioned that I had met 58 different artists, and a lot of these artists I've met more than once, and so I've got two of them. I couldn't decide between them. I'll tell you about both of them. Kip Winger from Winger. I've met him 3 times. I met Winger back in 1990 on the In the Heart of the Young tour, backstage at a really amazing concert. But then later on, I met Kip Winger on a solo tour. I've actually met him twice on 2 different solo tours. And both times, he was just the most down-to-earth, cool guy, to the point when I met him in the mid-90s on his first solo album tour. I asked about a video that I had heard about that they had done that was never released, like a home video recording. And he joked with me and told me, he was like, oh, I've got tons of those sitting around in my living room. Give me your address and I'll mail you one. And true to his word, now it took like 6 months, but he actually mailed me a VHS of this home video in the box and everything. He just said that they pressed them up and then the label decided not to release them and he didn't know what to do with them. And this was kind of before internet and stuff. So that was a cool experience. All 3 times, not one time has been any less than the others with him. And the other one, I met The Edge from U2. And this was a function that I went to for President Bill Clinton. I got lucky enough to be invited and I went. And afterwards, there was a sort of like after party in a club. And one of the presenters that night had been The Edge from U2. And so he showed up at the club and he was sitting in the corner. No one's talking to him. And so I was like, screw this. I'm going to go over there and sit down and talk to him. You know, I'm not missing this opportunity. And I went and sat down and talked to him for about 15 minutes before a huge crowd formed, realizing who he was. I think I kind of broke the ice with it. But he was, again, he just told me so much great information. I asked him, you know, what the band was working on, and he didn't hold anything back. I mean, I could have turned around and gone to a music magazine or called up a news channel and had the scoop of a lifetime, talking about 3 different albums they were working on at the time. And those things have since been released, but at the time, nobody knew about this stuff. And I just really, really appreciated what he shared with me and how one-on-one and down-to-earth he was with me. It was just a fantastic experience. Film 1010 asked the question, what would be the last song you'd ever want to hear in the end? And he did clarify this by saying, like, if you were going to die, what would be the last song you'd want to hear? Now, I had to really think about this. I wasn't sure, and I tossed around a bunch of different ones. And, you know, ask me on a different day, I might tell you something else. But I chose Tom Petty, I Won't Back Down. That is a song that I just think is perfect from start to finish. The great message that it is, it gives me chills every time I listen to it. Just mentioning it to you right now, I get chills. It's just a fantastic tune. I could listen to that one any day of the week, kind of a thing. And I think if I had to be sent off, that would be a great tune for me to hear. All right, Charlie 10 asks, do you have a database for all your CDs? And I do not. Somewhere around the point when I was at about 3,000, I did type them all up at that point, and I never kept up with it. I keep it all in my head. I get asked this question all the time. You've got over 9,000 CDs. How do you possibly know what you have? I don't know. I just do. On occasion, I have bought duplicate of something, but I would say that's maybe happened 3 to 4 times in 32 years, kind of a thing. And usually it's because I think that that album is, say, back at home in Florida, not where I live now, kind of thing. And so I think I'm just going to go ahead and rebuy it. And then it turns out I actually do have it here, kind of a thing. So it's usually something like that. It has never been that I thought I didn't own an album and then bought it. I know all the albums I own, but that's also just because I really do keep up listening to all of this. Another question that is asked by Charlie 10, what stereo equipment do you use for playback? So I listen to mine on a small shelf system. It's a Denon, D-E-N-O-N, RCD-M41. So it's an M41 Denon unit. You can look it up online. I think they have some of the best sound around. I've tried, you know, Panasonics and Sonys and a whole bunch of different ones and stepped up to this one a few years ago, and I just really, really love the Denon quality of sound. Andy Pierce asks, do you own any cassettes? Yes, I do. I've got about 120 cassettes. And just to throw it in there, I also own about 200 LPs. But again, my prime medium is CDs. So Francisco Javier Sanchez Gonzalez asks, how many listens are given to an album until you decide to keep it? Well, first and foremost, as I mentioned earlier, I don't get rid of anything. So there isn't anything that I really have to listen to a certain number of times to decide to keep it or to decide to buy it. The way I decide to buy my things is if I'm a fan of that artist, I buy it no matter what. This is going to play into a question later on where someone is going to ask me how much of a completist I am. So, yeah, for me, it's not about a number of listens. Now, sometimes there's a thing where how long will it take for me to get into an album? But for the same reason that I don't get rid of anything, it may take me several listens to get into something, and it may take me some time. But ultimately, I buy an album and I keep it, and it doesn't matter. Next question here, Craig Dolman asks, what album have you been after but never found? And I really gave this one a lot of thought too, but I don't believe there's any albums that I've never found. I think I've found every album I've ever been looking for. The question has always just come down to whether I want to pay for that album with the cost that it is. And one of the things I've been hunting for a while is the Gene Simmons Vault 10 CD box set. I don't want the whole thing, and that's why I didn't pay the $2,000 price tag that it was at the time. I am looking to just buy the 10 CDs and the book. I have seen it for as low as $500, and if it comes down below that, I may buy it. So that's something I'm currently hunting for, may or not, buy in the end of the day. And he also asked, what's the most you've ever spent on an album? And I'm not really sure. I don't really keep track of that. I think I've spent between $50 to $80 on one individual CD. Now, the most expensive thing I've ever bought is the Pink Floyd Early Edition box set, which was over $500 when I bought it. So that one's definitely the most expensive, but I think that was like 27 to 29 discs in it. And once I got it and devoured it, and being the huge Pink Floyd fan it's the best $500 I ever spent, no doubt about it. So definitely no regrets there. All right, this was the one I was talking about here. Graham Allen asks, how much of a completist are you with your favorite bands? So I'm a big completist when it comes to my favorite bands. But it does come down to studio material. So I am a completist. I have to own everything studio-wise that band did. Now, he also asked the question, at what point do you stop buying? And so that's where it comes down to. If I've got a favorite band and I'm buying lots of stuff, but they start releasing just live album after live album and compilation after compilation, that's kind of where I draw the line. I am not a big live album fan. I want some live albums. If a member changes in the group, I may want to hear them live. If they change the set list, I would buy more live albums, but most bands play the same set of songs over and over and over, and I just don't need a bunch of those. So I sort of draw the line at best ofs and live collections, but every studio album, EP, doesn't matter. I will own that by my favorite band. And if there's box sets of unreleased material and whatnot, I've got to get those too. All right, Mark Durain asks, have you ever tried stop buying CDs? Not so much tried to stop buying them, but I have had to limit it at different times due to financial reasons, especially when I was in college, kind of a thing. But I've never really tried to stop buying them. That's my guilty pleasure. Some people go out and enjoy, drinking in the bars and that sort of stuff. I'm not a big drinker. I don't really enjoy going to the bars. So, people go out and spend $100 drinking in a bar. I'd rather spend $100 on CDs. That's kind of how I look at it. That's my guilty pleasure. I just spend my money in different ways than other people choose to. He also asked the question, when you get a new CD, do you already have the next one in mind that you're going to buy? I order lots of things at the same time. At any given time, I've got 10 to 15 to 20 different things on order. So it's never really like I'm ordering one and then I'm hunting or debating or whatever about buying the next thing. If I want it, I buy it. That's plain and simple. There's never anything that I say, I'm not going to buy it or I'm going to wait or whatever. If I want it, I just buy it. Stuff goes out of print so quickly that I don't take any chances anymore. As soon as it's released, I buy it, put it into the collection, and have it. So the other question that he asks is, do you ever tell yourself this is too much? And yes, all the time. I tell myself this is too much. 9,000 CDs is too much. Honestly, it's probably some kind of an addiction. If we get a psychologist in here, I'm sure they'd probably tell me that my reason for buying all these CDs is trying to fill some sort of void in my life. And maybe that's true, but I don't care. I love the music. Yes, sometimes I do tell myself that it wasn't necessary that I buy that particular album, especially when I go to used record stores and I'm just buying stuff up left and right to, fill out a collection or something. Sometimes I tell myself that, but in the end of the day, I still love having it, and I'm always grateful that I've got it. All right, J.O. Pedro Mendes Silva from Portugal asked, do I know any Portuguese bands? And only one came to mind, Moonspell. They're a gothic metal band. They're a little heavier than my taste in music, but I do know who they are and I have listened to them in the past. I would say that if you can recommend any straight up rock bands or hair bands, the kind of genre that I like, I'd love to know. So leave a comment and recommend something and I'll check them out. All right, Anthony Ferrano asks, are you into any jazz fusion bands? Yeah, so Steely Dan, I've seen them 3 times. The Dixie Dregs, I love Steve Morris. King Crimson, Chicago, Santana, Frank Zappa. Jean-Luc Ponty, the violinist, is fantastic. Done stuff with John Anderson from Yes. Jeff Beck, Ginger Baker, Bella Fleck, I love his banjo playing, and Jan Hammer. Keyboard playing. So lots of stuff. And I saw, so there's so many other great artists too, but that just gives you, some idea there. All right, and Christian Lunn asks, which version of LA Guns do I think is better? The Tracy and Phil version versus the Riley and Nichols version. So, no contest. I know I like them both, and I will support the Riley and Nichols version because I do think they're really good. But ultimately, there's no competition. The Phil Lewis version, I will all the time go with the original lead singer of a band over any other lineup of something. For me, the lead vocalist really makes the band, with a few exceptions of artists like Van Halen, with Eddie Van Halen, whose guitar work alone could define a band. Usually it's the lead vocalist, and I like the lead vocalist. So yeah, the Phil Lewis version I do think is best. But I also am a big fan of Phil's, and I like all his other projects, especially his first band, Girl, which happened to have Phil Collen of Def Leppard in it. If you're not familiar with them, check them out. They're really great. All right, and then I got 2 questions from some names that were unpronounceable for me. They were written in a language that I can't even type on my English, keyboard here. So I apologize. I don't have names to go with these here. The first one is, what is your opinion on the 2 Doors albums made without Jim Morrison? I love the fact that they tried to continue on. Now, I will say that I think they were missing the powerhouse vocalist that Jim Morrison was. But I really, really respect those guys. And there's hints of brilliance within those 2 albums that could have been amazing stuff if Jim Morrison had been part of those. And I love having them in my collection. So I consider them real Doors albums. And then another one that I got from somebody else was, do you rip all of your music to iTunes? And I do not. I have Apple streaming. So I keep all my CDs here, and no, not all of this stuff is in streaming. But I just listen to different things when I'm out traveling around streaming wise, and I save the CDs that aren't on streaming for special stuff that I listen to when I'm home. All right, so we're at the end of the music portion of this, and I'm going to wrap up now with some personal questions that I also got asked, so stick around if you're interested in those. Adam and Jared L. both asked the question if I am married or seeing anyone, and the answer is no and no. I would like to change that, but I haven't had any luck. Unfortunately, this darn pandemic has really put a damper on my dating lifestyle. I'm sure it has for a lot of you guys too. George A. Mendez asks, how did you get your cat? And I was kind of hoping my cat would be floating around. I was going to grab him and show you guys, but he's not here. He's hiding out somewhere in the other room, I think. I adopted him from the ASPCA. It's a shelter, and I don't believe in buying animals. I think there's so many animals that need a home, so I adopt my animals. And he also asks, why not a dog? And I guess it's just because I grew up with cats, and they also require much less work. I'm a single guy, as I just told you, and I live alone, so having a cat takes care of himself. I put out the dry food in the bowl of water and he can take care of himself, kind of a thing. Sir Norman asks, what city do you live in? I live in New York City. So when I mentioned I grew up in Florida, but moved to New York City for college and have lived here ever since for the last 22 years that I've been here. He also asks, are you religious? I am not religious, but I will say that I do believe in a higher power of some kind. I think that this amazing, beautiful universe that we live in, something had to start it, whatever that might be. We might not be able to put our finger on it. I'm a firm believer in science. Maybe science is my religion, I don't know. But yeah, not really religious in the traditional sense of the word, though. Master of the Fresh, which is probably the most interesting name I've had to read tonight, asks, are you a DC fan and a fan of comic books? I am a fan of DC, but I'm also a fan of Marvel, and I used to collect comic books as a kid, but now I just pretty much buy the special edition ones that are prequels to movies, or maybe music bands are in, like the Kiss related ones and that sort of stuff. Kendall Smith asks, do you like any sports? And I would say generally no, I'm not a sports person, but I do like sports movies, and I like the history surrounding sports, the achievements that these guys do, like the stats and that kind of stuff. So big into sports movie. You give me something like Draft Day or For Love of the Game, 8 Men Out, something like that. Those are some really great sports related movies. And I do watch things like the Super Bowl and World Series and stuff like that, because I always think those kind of matchups and pair-ups are really cool. Next question, also from Kendall Smith, is, do you collect anything other than music? And so, yeah, I've got some stuff I put in the background here to show you guys. So yeah, I love, I collect coins and stamps. I also collect knives, and I know that sounds kind of scary. I don't mean it to. Old replica type stuff. So this one here is a French and Indian War period 1760 knife that is made hanging on my wall, kind of a thing. That started back from childhood and going to historical places, and my father collects those kind of replica items as well. I also like replica items like historical things from the Titanic and stuff like that. And movie memorabilia is the big thing. And so again, you'll see some of that stuff behind me there. You got some Blade Runner and some Marvel stuff, Hank Pym and Two-Face coin, and Star Wars. That's a replica lightsaber down there. You got the Goonies thing. So I put some stuff there to try to show you some of my other interests and things. All right, and the final question of the night comes from the 80s Live Here. She told me her name was Heather. So she asked, what are my tattoos of? And surprisingly, I've never really gotten any questions on this. So I did think this was worthwhile in putting in here. And I don't know if you guys are really going to be able to see them in this. And maybe some point I can do better viewing of these things. But I have 2 full sleeves on my arms. And they're mirror images, or they have mirroring images of each other. So like this side is day and this one is night. This one is more earth-based, whereas this one is more sky-based. This one's more modern in style, whereas this one's more classic, traditional tattooing style, stuff like that. I've got a sea serpent woman on this one with a Roger Dean piece of artwork behind it, landscape. This one here's got a bird on it and a woman flying in a Mobius strip, or sort of swinging through the sky with clouds and whatnot. I've got other tattoos. I've got one on my back. I've got some stuff on my shoulders, stuff on my legs. So I've got a lot of different tattoos, but the 2 sleeves are the biggest ones that I've got. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this. It was kind of a long event here, about 30 minutes. So hopefully you enjoyed the question and answer session of this. And again, if you enjoyed this and you'd like for me to do more of these sort of things, maybe I could do them under themes or whatnot, let me know. I'd be happy to give it a shot. And certainly leave your comments. Let me know your thoughts. Again, hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you all real soon. Bye, everyone.